Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Fast Flag Facts with John. I'm John and this is the show where we talk about the who, what, when, where, and why of flags from around the world. Last time we did the flag of New York City and we learned about its interesting Dutch and also Nazi connections. This week we are looking at a country level flag and we are going south of the equator to look at the national flag of Brazil. The flag of Brazil was designed by a man named Raimundo Mendes. He was born on January 5th, 1855, and he died in 1927. In addition to being a political activist in Brazil, he was also a philosopher and a mathematician. What's the most interesting thing about him is that he was a member of a religion called positivism. Positivism is a little bit like Christianity, but they have very unique beliefs. For example, they oppose all wars and they oppose the concept of missionary work. So they don't believe that it is the job of someone to go and force other cultures to join their religion. Worldwide, there are quite a few members of the positivist movement. Most of them live either in Brazil or actually in France. Another thing about Raimundo is that he held the personal belief that someday far in the future, all nations should fade away and all of humanity should just live under a single umbrella. He was actually against the idea, philosophically, of borders and lines that separated humanity, which is actually quite funny when you think about the fact that he designed the symbol of a country. Raimundo had some help. He was not alone in the designing process of the flag. His brother-in-law, Miguel Lemos, and Decio Valleres, who was a painter and a sculptor living in Brazil from 1851 until 1931. The flag of Brazil is a green field with a yellow rhombus. Inside of the yellow rhombus is a blue disc. Inside the blue disc, we have a curved banner that says Order and Progress in Portuguese and 27 star formations. The green and the yellow were part of a much older imperial flag, and they represent the houses of Braganza de Pedro I, who was the first emperor of Brazil, and the yellow represents the house of his wife, Maria, who was actually a Habsburg. You may remember from our previous episode on Mexico City, we talked a little bit about the Habsburg family. The expression Order and Progress comes from the positivist religion, and it's from a much longer phrase, which is love as the principle, order as the basis, progress as the goal. Each of the stars on the flag represents one of Brazil's states, and their size on the flag is relative to the size of the states. The arrangement of the stars is supposed to be indicative of what the sky looked like over Rio de Janeiro at 8:30 a.m. on the 15th of November, 1889, which is when the Republic was first declared. One star you'll notice is above the banner. That represents the one state that is actually in the northern hemisphere. The smallest star on the flag represents the federal district, the capital of Brasilia. All of the other stars radiate around it, so you can actually see a representation of the capital being the most important city within the flag. Brazil was first declared a republic in 1889, but we need to rewind a little bit to see where the flag originated. So we have to go all the way back to the year 1500. This is when Portugal first settled a colony in Brazil. And so from the year 1500 until about 1815, the Portugal flag was flown. However, during this 300-year stretch, various merchant and naval ships started flying their own unique flags. These are the first original flags, and this is where we start to see the spherical shape. In the year 1815, Brazil was elevated to a status of a kingdom. They got a king who was still paying fealty to Portugal, but he got to kind of do his own thing, and they got their very first official flag. A couple of years later, Brazil decided to declare total independence from Portugal in 1822, and the former king of Brazil declared himself the Emperor of Brazil. This new imperial flag featured the green field and the yellow rhombus that I talked to earlier. Brazil was an empire for about 60 years, but in the 1880s, things started to get a little bit tumultuous. Even though it was a monarchy, there was a parliament which actually wrote the specific laws and carried out the specific laws, and by the 1880s, the king and parliament really were not seeing eye to eye. There was a lot of unrest. The final straw came in 1888 when the emperor decided to abolish slavery, which generally is considered a pretty good thing. However, many of the people in parliament were slaveholders or owned businesses that utilized slave labor. So the parliament teamed up with the military and decided to have a revolution or a coup on November 15th, 1889. This revolution or coup was largely bloodless, and a lot of the writings from this era remark about how easily the Emperor Pedro II just sort of gave up his empire. He kind of didn't put up a fight. And so November 15th, 1889 is considered Independence Day for the First Republic of Brazil. For a couple of interim days while they were setting up what this new government was going to look like, they flew a flag that looked like this. That is because one of the main revolutionaries, a man named Rui Barbosa, thought that the flag should look like the United States flag. However, Raimundo Mendes and his friends stepped in, and 4 days later they had come up with what was the original version of the modern day Brazil flag. It was first premiered on November 19th, 1889 and had 21 stars representing the 21 states that Brazil had at the time. The current iteration with the 27 stars was premiered on May 11th, 1992. That is when the most recent state was added to the Brazilian government. In the very early days of the first Brazilian Republic, there was some pushback for this flag. Specifically, some people didn't like that it kept some of the symbology from the empire, which they had wanted to break from. And other people did not like that it so prominently included a motto from the positivist religion, which was and still is a minority religion in the country. There are also some modern complaints about this flag, and it has to do with economics and the textile industry. Because there are so many stars and they are in such a non-regular pattern, it actually is slightly more expensive and difficult to recreate the flag. You can see the flag of Brazil in a lot of places all over the world, and this is largely due to football, also called soccer here in the United States and in Canada. The Brazilian football team is one of the most popular sports teams in the entire world. And so anytime there is a World Cup, or even just anytime Brazil is playing, you are likely to see fans of this sport waving the flag or wearing the jersey. Outside of Brazil, you are likely to see the flag anywhere that Brazilian expatriate communities live. There are an estimated 1.5 million Brazilians living outside of continental Brazil. Almost 33% of that, 500,000, live in the United States alone. And so going around the United States, especially in places like New York City, Boston, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Chicago, Miami, and even here in Orlando, you may find the Brazilian flag flying. The reason I chose this flag this week is that it is one of the classic flags that causes controversy in the vexillology world. It breaks a lot of those rules, and as I said before, it's very difficult to recreate. So a lot of people dislike it. However, it's so iconic and so unique that many people in the vexillology world really do love and appreciate it. What do you think? Is it a good flag or is it a bad flag? It's also a great excuse to talk about Brazilian history. Brazil is one of the largest countries of the world, both in terms of population and in terms of land area. And perhaps I'm speaking just for myself here, but it is one that I don't think a lot of people know too much about. Before researching this episode, I had no idea that they had an imperial history or its relationship with this very interesting sort of minority religion of positivism. I didn't even know positivism existed. So there you go. You just learned about a flag, a little bit about Brazil's past, and also about a religion that you probably had never heard about before. Not bad for 10 minutes, eh? That does it for us this week. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel. I want to hear your feedback on the Brazilian flag and see how good you can be at drawing it from memory. Next week, we are going to do another country level flag. This one, by a personal request from one of our subscribers, we are going to cover the flag of the European nation of Greece.